So the global flood in historical science. Let's start by picking up on and developing what we discussed last time about the global flood itself. John Morris writes, "The worldwide mountain-covering deluge deposited most of the world's fossil-bearing rock. The naturalist, denying the fact of the flood, misinterprets the rocks and fossils. Because the flood was a global event, it laid down the rocks and fossils, and there is no evidence for evolution or for an old Earth." He's absolutely right. Earth's ubiquitous rock strata and fossils. As Ken Ham puts it, if there were a global flood, what would we expect to find? He famously says, billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth. And what do we find? Just that. Billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth. We, as a family, just crossed most of Canada, west to east, a week or two ago now. And we stopped at one of our national parks, Dinosaur National Park in Alberta. I don't think that's the exact name, but we were looking at fossil remains that had been uncovered there, and several times they note that the fossils had been buried, sometimes in mass fossil graves of dinosaurs, that they had been buried in a flood. They wouldn't go so far as to call it a global flood because they're naturalists. They're denying God and His Word, and they're interpreting the evidence through that false lens. But the Bible tells us how it is that we find these buried creatures who obviously die drowning and are buried in this liquefied earth as occurs in a flood, how they got there. And so it's wonderful to see those evidences and show those to the kids again. The theory of evolution is primarily based upon the supposed time spans represented, supposedly, by fossil deposits and rock strata. If those strata and fossils were deposited by the great flood of Noah's day, which took place over the course of 1 year, according to the scriptures, about 4,500 years ago, according to the scriptures, what does that mean for the evolutionary theory, the evolutionary myth, its time scale, and its other claims? It was the catastrophic global flood of our father Noah's day that resulted in the thousands of feet of sediments containing billions of dead plants and animals, which were clearly deposited by water rather than quickly hardened into rock and fossils, as Terry Mortensen writes. Of course, this means that the notions of evolution in millions of years are lies. Whitcomb and Morris, in their seminal work, The Genesis Flood, state that all of these biblical inferences from the flood record, Genesis 6-9, are clearly supported in at least a general way by the actual records of the rocks. Almost all of the sedimentary rocks of the earth, which are the ones containing fossils from which the supposed evolutionary geologic history of the earth has been largely deduced, have been laid down by moving waters. As I said at that dinosaur park in Alberta, they admitted on their placards that these fossils were creatures who drowned and were buried in a muddy, watery grave. So this statement is so obvious, say Whitcomb and Morris, and so universally accepted that it needs neither proof nor elaboration. Sedimentary rocks, by definition, are those that have been deposited as sediments, eroded from some previous location, transported, and then deposited by water. Exactly the sort of thing which occurs in any flood.